Attention pioneers of Antares. Until November 23rd, all our patrons at the $10 tier or above will receive an embroidered patch featuring the insignia of the 1077th Tank Regiment. Those at the $25 tier or above will additionally receive a custom enamel pin of the Confederacy's emblem. You'll find more information in the description.
It is difficult for any outsider to truly understand the significance of Thai Calnet to the Banthurian species. Outwardly, it is merely a small moon, hardly unique when compared to the untold millions of similar such planetoids encountered across the galaxy. Yet, at one time, when on a primitive world in a distant part of the galaxy, the Roman Senate was debating on whether they should abandon their capital, the interstellar Banthurian Empire brought their greatest treasures here, relics and trophies taken from their enemies. The Banthurian warrior Khans measured themselves by those they had fought against, and these objects were treated with such reverence as to be almost holy. Statues of Tisru gods taken during the siege of their throne world, Skrek obelisks captured during the Battle of Valonis, and even the corpses of insectoid drones, supposedly the vanguard of a vast swarm, slowly approaching from dark space. Even when their empire collapsed into a chaotic storm of rival fiefdoms and petty despots, the sanctity of Thai Calnet and the curates who held it was universally respected. Many aspiring warlords attempted to place their own trophies here, yet none were considered worthy. The figure that would come to be known as the Great Khan was the first to triumph here in an age, and while it remains unknown what item he offered that was accepted into the Thai Calnet, the affirmation of the curates was enough to form the Banthurian Khanate. The victories of the Great Khan brought a renewed stream of trophies to the moon of Thai Calnet, but his defeat transformed it entirely. While its significance has remained, today it exists within the Commonwealth of Vitalas, a state created by its liberators. As one of the largest collections of artifacts from across the galaxy, it has attracted every manner of historian and enthusiast, and become infamous for the lengths they must go through to even enter its outermost holds. The Prime Minister of Antares, the Archpriest of the Spirits, even the High Chancellor of Vitalas itself, all have been, publicly and embarrassingly, denied access. Yet, by the decree of the last Great Khan of the Banthurians, there is some permitted unrestricted entry to walk among the collections as if they were his emissaries. Among those free to enter the Thai Calnet are the descendants of Liliana Reyes and the 99 named of Malacca, all sailors assigned to any ship that bears the name Pursuer, and every member, former and current, of the 1077th Tank Regiment. As one of the most decorated and renowned units in the Antares Armed Forces, and its special status within many different cultures across the Commonwealth, the 1077th's history is a unique blend of verifiable fact overlaid with near-mythic significance. The unit traces its lineage to the 65th Tank Battalion, activated in 265 AL as part of the wider military build-up and reorganization undertaken by the Confederate Army during the Vril War. The 65th quickly became known as the Excellent Extracts for the presence of officers and soldiers from every republic within its ranks. It consisted at this time of 3 tank companies, a service and headquarters company, and was assigned to the 7th Armored Division. The battalion took part in the liberation of Torix, but disintegrated as a functional unit during the disastrous orbital landings across the planet, which scattered the 65th's component elements across the entire theater of operations. Nevertheless, at least one tank company from the 65th Battalion fell under the command of Colonel Talik Salahaddin and took part in the legendary counterattack and encirclement of the Vril resistance. According to the unit's own internal history, Colonel Salahaddin led the final attack from one of the 65th's tanks after his own vehicle was rendered inoperable by enemy fire. Given every armored unit within the modern Commonwealth Army, as a matter of tradition, makes these same claims, modern historians do not take these supposed accounts more seriously than those of any other unit. The 65th Tank Battalion was inactivated 3 years after the liberation of Torix in 271 AL, only to then be reactivated as the 65th Tank Regiment at the outbreak of the First Beldros War in 306 AL. It deployed with the 24th Armored Division as part of the invasion of the Beldrossi world of Thisak, and remained there as part of the Confederate garrison until the war's conclusion in 320 AL. In one notable incident, soldiers from the unit were caught stealing a kind of alien beehive, and the 65th adopted the name the Honeysuckers as a result. 12 years later, in 332 AL, the unit participated in Operation Chromatica, the liberation of the homeworld of the Cloister of the Spirits from the Anthorian Empire. Despite its participation in the major campaigns of the Antares Confederacy, it was during the Banthorian invasion, also known as the War of the Great Khan, that the regiment would earn its legendary status. At the time of the declaration of war, the 65th had been redesignated the 304th Tank Regiment and assigned to the 15th Infantry Division on the world of Ariane. It had become known as the Birdcatchers in the intervening time, after its commanding officer was apparently attacked by a Rumdaran cardinal during training maneuvers. It was made up at this time of 4 tank companies, each equipped with 18 modern Salahuddin main battle tanks, and a command and reconnaissance company with 12 Takoba armored fighting vehicles. The unit was hurriedly redeployed to the frontier colony of Malacca, and again redesignated as the 1077th Tank Regiment, initially intended as a temporary name, but the one it would be permanently assigned thereafter. As the scale of the unfolding military disaster became apparent to the Confederate units stationed on the planet, the 1077th was moved into the foothills surrounding the capital city of Yost. Its intended role was to counterattack the leading Banthurian landing elements before they could properly consolidate, but was left out of position when the invasion finally began. It instead disrupted several smaller Banthurian landing zones and logistical elements, before withdrawing into the center of Yost itself. Over the next 6 months, the 1077th became a critical component of the city's defense. Its tanks became highly valuable for their use as mobile bunkers in a rapidly shifting defensive line. Their crews developed a number of unorthodox tactics, including disguising their tanks as inactive wrecks and hiding them within the urban rubble. During one notable ambush, the regiment's Charlie Company managed to destroy an enemy frigate providing ultra-low fire support over Yost spaceport. In another, vehicle elements from its Delta and Alpha companies decimated a convoy of Banthurian armored walkers attempting to scale the besieged Liuban Tower. Over the course of the fighting, the 1077th began absorbing surviving personnel and vehicles from destroyed Confederate units, maintaining and then exceeding its initial fighting strength. The last major offensive action undertaken by the regiment as a whole was the Battle of Gretchenstein Park. With declining ammunition and fuel reserves, a final charge was made into the Banthurian lines. The action destroyed several elite enemy formations, including the so-called Herald of the Khan, but left the 1077th with only a fraction of its vehicles and no means to transport them more than a few miles. After the death of General Reyes, the 1077th led the last remnants of the Confederate defenders in a final stand at Discovery Plaza. It was destroyed to a soldier after 30 hours of intense fighting. Unaware of the colony's continued resistance, the 1077th had already been removed from the Confederate Army's active units some 4 months earlier. It was not until well after the war, when the archives of the fallen Khan began to be translated, that the role of the 1077th in the fall of Malacca was understood by the wider Confederacy. As a unit that had won the deep respect and admiration of both sides, the reactivation of the 1077th Tank Regiment in 400 AL became a symbolic point of reconciliation between the Antares Confederacy and the newly founded Commonwealth of Vitalas. The 1077th participated in every major conflict for the next century. It charged across plains of burning ash during the campaign to liberate the Anthonians, and smashed through the walls of the Imperial Palace during the Second Battle of Zandari. In each campaign, it acted with dignity and restraint, and became a focus of Confederate propaganda efforts in the subsequent eras of rebuilding. By the time the Antares Confederacy had rejected the demands of the Skrek, the empire that subjugated Earth, the 1077th had become an almost ceremonial unit. While its soldiers were some of the most experienced in the armed forces, there was some concern that such a prominent force might be destroyed in battle, and its loss might represent a significant moral defeat. It was the Banthurian population of Antares that essayed these reservations, and the 1077th would see action during the invasion of the Font of Knowledge itself, serving again under the 24th Armored Division. The regiment's famous attack through the ruined skyway of the Skrek throne world reinvigorated public interest in the unit. But it was during the war against the Greater Terran Empire that the 1077th again reached the heights it had first achieved on Malacca. According to popular legend, in the days leading up to the invasion, the regiment was invited to take part in a ceremony on Thai Calnet. This was supposedly a final act of rapprochement between Antares and the Banthorian people, an offer extended only to the antecedent units from the fall of Malacca and the war against the Great Khan. While the Antares armed forces have never commented on the matter, leaks suggest that those in attendance promised to uphold a unique kind of Banthorian chivalry, swearing oaths before the recovered throne of the Great Khan himself. During the invasion of the UTE, the 1077th Tank Regiment again distinguished itself during the landings across Sigma Draconis, Procyon, and Sirius. It fell at this time under the command of Colonel Chantry Bokor, described by his contemporaries as one of the most hated men in the Commonwealth Army. Blunt, cold, and often rude, Bokor had developed a reputation among outsiders for his seemingly xenophobic behavior. He was frequently intolerant and suspicious of the Antares Commonwealth's allies. This, however, was likely a misinterpretation of Bokor's behavior towards everyone, and those that served with him would later reveal that he was equally intolerant and suspicious of the Antares military itself. A famous remark by a Vrul company commander that served under him alleged that Bokor is the most even-tempered person in the Commonwealth Army. He is always in rage. Despite this notoriety, Bokor is considered today one of the most brilliant field officers in Antares history, outmaneuvering and destroying Terran formations many times his own regiment's size. His penchant for riding personally aboard his lead tank, directing the movements of the regiment through outlandish insults and colourful language, earned the deep respect of his soldiers. It was during the climax of the Battle of Earth, however, that Colonel Bokor entered into the upper pantheon of Antares military legends for his refusal to obey orders. Directed to advance into a zone of questionable tactical value in which significant civilian casualties would have been unavoidable, Bokor instead repeatedly refused to carry out the attack, before riding into division headquarters, arresting at gunpoint the Major General who had ordered the attack. His implementation of the Commonwealth Code of Values and Ethics is credited with saving over 40,000 lives, including that of future United Nations of Earth General Secretary Holly Clifford. It is still widely studied today in Commonwealth military academies. In the modern Commonwealth Army, the 1077th is one of the few permanent units never to be disbanded under the direct order of the Office of the Prime Minister. While the equipment with which it has been outfitted, the composition of its companies, and the names of its officers has changed across the centuries, it has carried with it an unwavering record of professionalism and dignity. Its legacy of service has granted the 1077th unique traditions both in its conduct and uniform. It is the only unit not required to stand for the anthem of the Anthorian Republic, the only unit allowed to wear the ceremonial crystal swords of the Cloister of the Spirits, and most famously, one of the few to ever enter the archives of the Thai Calnet. It maintains alliances not only with a myriad of other units across the Commonwealth Army, Navy, and Pioneers, but also those of Earth and dozens of other nations. And on all too many worlds can be found monuments dedicated to the soldiers that filled its ranks, memorials ranging from simple markers to grand archways or plazas. Reminders to the citizens of the galaxy that no matter how dire the circumstances, how terrible the foe, there will always be those ready to confront tyranny in all its forms, and the tanks of the 1077th will be at the forefront, leading the charge.
The Templin Institute investigates the nations, factions, and organizations of alternate worlds. If you've enjoyed this video and would like to join the Templin Institute, consider pledging to our Patreon page. Along with increased security access, you'll be able to vote in polls to determine future topics, get custom wallpaper every week, and receive some other exclusive rewards.